Hurricane season starts in just a few weeks on June 1st. And Bill, when it is hurricane season, a big area for forecasting hurricanes comes from efforts at Keesler Air Force Base.
It certainly does. And earlier this week, I had a chance to talk with the hurricane hunters. They had a media day of sorts out at Keesler Air Force Base. Let's take a look at that right now. Well, with hurricane season, the beginning right around the corner, we got a chance to come out to Keesler Air Force Base and talk to the men and women behind the hurricane hunters. We're familiar with them if you lived here on the coast. They go into storms and they fly atmospheric missions. And with all that information, we're going to talk to Jeremy Dehart. He is the weather officer for many of these flights. And Jeremy, first of all, we're here at this point for an awareness and education tour to kind of get a peek behind the curtain. And then that's important not only to the public, but to you guys to show people what you do on a daily basis when you're flying in these storms.
That's right. Yeah, we have a very important mission. So obviously we're trying to, as the weather officer, our job is to basically be a mission director. So we will literally tell the pilots and the navigator up front where to fly. We're ultimately, for hurricane missions, we're trying to get to the center of the storm. And so as we're doing that, we do what's called a fix, is actually locate the center. And as we're flying through the storm environment, the plane is gathering all kinds of atmospheric data, pressure, temperature, wind speed, wind direction, humidity. And we're packaging all that data and we're sending it off the airplane via satellite communications to the National Hurricane Center to help them improve their forecast. And that's, in a sense, what we do.
Now, one thing we heard in the briefing, you guys are citizen airmen, citizen airwomen, you're reservists, so it's kind of off and on what you do, but especially during storm season, it's mostly on. And kind of talk about that. It's a little different than the way it used to be, I guess, where they were full-time. Now you're reservists. Right.
Used to be, this was an active duty, part of the active duty Air Force, and in the last 30 years or so, we've transitioned to the reserve component. We do still have what would be known as traditional reservists that do it, citizen airmen that do it part-time. We have, weather officers that work for the National Weather Service. We have pilots that fly for Delta and FedEx, and they come here in the summer and they fly a couple weeks of hurricane missions and they go back to doing that. I'm a full-timer here, so I get to do this job year-round. Our unit's separated about half and half, full-time and part-time force.
So when you're on one of these flights, once you guys get close to the storm, you kind of take over. Hey, we need to get here. Hey, we need to get here, that type of thing. And it really becomes a hunt for finding the strongest winds, the lowest pressure, and that's kind of where the meteorology takes control, right?
That's right, yeah. And so again, that is our job to do that. And so the storm is always evolving, and so that's why it's so important to have one of our airplanes in the air as the storm's developing or maybe losing strength. So it's all happening in real time. And so, satellites, they're great, but they can't really replicate what we can do inside the storm in real time. And so that's our job, essentially.
It's amazing. This was started by a bet back in the 40s with a pilot of an AT-6. Now you've got 10 C-130s and you fly all over the world. This has really evolved with the technology, but as you said, you still need these flights to talk about evacuations, and there's a lot that goes into it, and it's also about saving lives too, right?
Yeah, ultimately that's the main thing. So we want to, the data that we provide to the National Hurricane Center helps them improve their forecasts, and it's been shown to improve the intensity and location forecasts by about 20%. And each mile of coastline can be up to $1 million in the local economy that's for evacuation. So you think about just the impact that has in local communities when that cone of uncertainty is issued. And so that's really why we do this job. We want to help the forecast improve, help the forecasters at the Hurricane Center do the best job they can, and really minimize the impact to human lives and property.
Now, I followed you on Twitter, or X now as it's called, and you've posted some really interesting videos with the stadium effect of storms and some of the scary stuff that happens. Do you ever get a little concerned up there? You're like, man, we are really getting rock and rolling. The one time I flew with you guys in Ian, it was a wild ride to be sure, but I guess you do it so much, it becomes part of it. Still got to be a little unnerving being out there with the worst Mother Nature has to offer.
No, absolutely. I mean, we're all humans too, so we feel it in the airplane. We don't like turbulence any more than anybody else does, but obviously some of the storms are going to be worse than others. Hurricane Michael, I flew the landfall mission on Hurricane Michael. Cat 5 going right up to landfall. We lost a couple thousand feet of altitude and in the eye wall, so nobody wants to feel those things, but at the end of the day, we also have a job to do, so when it comes down to it, you know, when we're going through that environment, and especially as we're going through the eye, we kind of focus on what we're doing and just make sure that we're doing the best job that we can.
And the last thing at this point, early May, looking ahead to June, there's been storms where you probably had to go out before the official start on June 1st, but this is where you kind of get the game plan together. Hey, this might be how things look, but you never really know until the season starts, I guess.
That's right. I mean, there's all these, you know, forecasts for, you know, based on the climate, you know, oscillations and all that sort of thing, what's going on. But, you know, all it takes is one storm. It could be forecast to be a slow season, and we have a very impactful storm that can affect U.S. coastline. And so you never really know. So we're always prepared. We always have the maximum number of crews ready to go for the season, and this year's no different.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Good luck as the hurricane hunters get ready for the 2025 hurricane season. Who knows what it'll throw at us? Yeah, hopefully it won't be too busy, but they always forecast, hey, it looks like a busy season. We've been really fortunate the last few years not to have any major issues. Probably since Zeta we had any major issues, but what they do is so impressive. And in the storm, I got to ride with them during Hurricane Ian. They're, you know, I'm back there, you know, like, oh my gosh, with all the turbulence, right? They're popping and dropping the drop-ons and going in and out. It is amazing. And the work they do is critical, not only forecasting, but those cones, who's going to evacuate, that type of thing.
It is. When you see those forecast cones out there and knowing who should be prepared, you know, it's that's their main mission to let you know that.
Yeah, he said there was a factor there of an area could cost $1 million to evacuate, so they've done such a good job narrowing where those forecast cones are, and that saves lives, also saves money too. Right.